Good evening, family. Welcome to another edition of HAPI Talks. Tonight we have with us the legendary, the one and only brother, Professor Kaba. How are you today, sir?
My brother Taki, I'm doing excellent, brother. I am just so appreciative of this opportunity to be able to speak with you and speak to your audience. And I thank our sister Felicia for operating all the things behind the scenes that make it happen. Just like sisters do, they keep us all in line. Us brothers, we understand what's going on. So thank you, Sister Felicia, for all that you do.
Yeah, so we have an exciting interview tonight. Oh, man, we're talking about preparing the youth and our communities for the 21st century. Such a powerful topic, very important details. But before we get into that, could you just tell the family a little bit about yourself, please?
Well, to give you a sense of my background, and I think what gives me the ability to come and speak to you as it relates to education is I started teaching since 1977. I was a high school teacher, Gary, Indiana. I then returned back to New York in 1979. And so from October of 1979 until July of 2009, basically 30 years, but 31 if you include everything, I was with our children in South Central Bronx, New York, where I taught every grade. I started as my license was early childhood. So my focus is on 4 and 5-year-olds, because I felt that if I could get to the young people, you know, Dr. Van Sertima, I had a chance to go to Mexico with Dr. Van Sertima in 1984. And I remember something that he said the first night that we were in Mexico. He said, I have got to erase all the nonsense that's been written on the chalkboards of your mind in order to write the truth. And I often thought about that because for so many reasons, we as a people just don't understand who we are and what we've done. And I wanted to get to the young people before the nonsense was written on the chalkboards of their mind. I wanted to be the writing on the chalkboards of their mind. And that is what I did for a number of years. So I've taught every grade, I've taught every subject, and I've also taught college, going through PhD candidates. I've taught for 14 years. So that's my background. Also, I've been not only a teacher, but I've been an assistant principal. I've been executive assistant to the superintendent of Community School District 9. I've been directors of programs. I've had budgets where I could put programs together. I've worked on the federal level, the state level, the city level, and the local level. The reason why I say this is just simply to allow the audience to understand that I am the spook who sat by the classroom door. I'm a person that watched what was happening. I was watching. I have bore witness to excellent education, and I have bore witness to horrific education. In fact, I have even bore witness to miseducation and diseducation. And I know what the principles of that are. And I know what we have to do as a community. And so this is why I've dedicated my life, because I don't believe in retirement. Retirement to me, you know, what I just did when I retired, that's not retirement. I graduated. That was another graduation.
Right.
Now I'm doing what I was.
Now the real work starts.
Say again, brother?
Now the real work starts.
That's right. Because I always wondered, why do we call it commencement addresses when I'm ready to graduate and get out? Because commencement means to begin.
Right.
And so when I retired in 2009, I'm now able to come into the community. I'm able to do programs like this with dynamic brothers such as yourself, Taki, and sisters like Felicia, who is operating these types of activities to get the word out to the community. We must prepare our children for the future. We must also have a 20-year plan. We have to not only plan for the children that are amongst us now, we have to prepare for those yet born. We have to have a 20-year plan, and we have to start to implement this plan as real as it can be, because you can see that it's time. Because Bob Marley said it. Bob Marley said there's a natural mystic in the air.
Right.
If you listen carefully, you will hear it, you know?
Right.
We hear this, and we see there's a change that's going to come.
Right.
It's happening as we speak. So that's my background in education. I'm a curriculum writer, and I'm a staff developer that brings curriculum into the classroom to assist the teacher in understanding, how do you teach African culture to children? How do you do it? How do you approach it? How do you include mathematics and chemistry and physics? How do you include geography and history and politics and economics? How do you include the subject areas that we want them to be proficient in? This is not just about history. This is about every subject area as it applies in the classroom so that someone can learn their history utilizing their own cultural common sense. Because Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop tells us that if there are three things people will take from you when they wish to oppress you. They will take your history, your language, and your psychological factor. Your psychological factor are what Dr. Leonard Jeffries calls your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. And after they take that from you, they then superimpose through force and sometimes murder and mayhem their history, their language, their values, interests, and principles, so that as an African man or woman, as I look at the world through someone else's eyes, and I'm attempting to make decisions that in my life, whatever decision I make cannot be in my favor, because I'm not looking at the world through my eyes. I'm looking at the world through someone else's eyes. So everything that I do works against the very nature of who and what I am.
Right.
So we have to restore our history. We have to restore our language, which I'm recommending that we embrace Medu Neter, or hieroglyphics, as the classical African language of the African diaspora at home and abroad. But the practical language that we should speak, I'm recommending Kiswahili. All African languages have their place. And it would be wonderful for us to learn many African languages. But a practical language where we can start right now is Kiswahili. Because Kiswahili, first of all, is the largest African language that exists. It is the 7th largest, and maybe even larger, than all of the languages in the world. It's considered to be the 7th. It has been adapted by the United Nations as a language to be used in the United Nations. So, for instance, if I go to Brazil, brothers and sisters speak Portuguese. I speak English. We should speak to each other in Kiswahili. Right. If I go to Puerto Rico, brothers and sisters in La Huiza Aldea speak Spanish. I speak English. We should speak Kiswahili to each other.
Sounds like you speak a little Spanish there, though.
Oh, well, Spanish was my second language.
Okay.
And I didn't learn that in school. That was in my community where I grew up, the Amsterdam Projects down there on 63rd, right there by Lincoln Center.
Right.
So I've not only that, which is interesting, is that when I was a young brother, I went to a Catholic church. I was Roman Catholic, and a choir boy, altar boy, went through all sorts of stuff, right? But when I would go home, my neighbors who were from Puerto Rico, they practiced Santeria. And there were times when I would hang out with my friend and we'd be in the house and they would be going through the customs and all of the celebration, fiesta, man, it was good, right? So my introduction to Africa was not through history. My introduction to Africa was through spirituality. And that becomes important to understand, because when I embraced Las Siete Potencias, the 7 potential powers, when I saw Oshun and Obatala and Jemaja, I was coming from an African perspective. I was looking at African statues and I was looking at African pictures on the wall. I didn't see none of that in my church.
Nah, not gonna see that there.
Now all of a sudden we dancing, we singing, we eating, we're having a good time. And I began to become immersed in this African culture, not even realizing it. Now, when I turned 12 and a half, going into 14 years of age, that's when I began my relationship with Professor John Henrik Clarke. That's when the history came in. That's when the geography came in. That's when the social came in. But my introduction to Africa came through the spiritual world, because I was calling on Obatala and Chango back in the 60s.
Right.
As a young brother, I was like 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age.
Wow. Wow. So with that, speaking of being a young brother, how do we prepare the youth for the 21st century?
Be honest. Be honest and be bold. Be bold and be black. Unapologetically. And explain to them their legacy and who they are and what their role in life is, and that they have been given a divine gift by a creator and that their job is to search for that. And as a facilitator and as an educator, it is my job to assist them in the facilitation of knowing that you already know what you got to know. Ain't nobody gonna teach you nothing. I'm not giving you nothing. Anything that anyone who is on this StreamYard presentation for the time that we're here, if we get into a conversation that I say something that somebody would say, wow, I didn't know that. Well, yes, you did. You did know that. You just didn't know that you knew that.
Right, right.
You know, it's like if, and I use the analogy that you turn off all the lights in the room, can't see a thing. And then all of a sudden you find the light switch. You turn the light switch on, light goes on. You see the chairs, the tables, the fan, the pictures, the TV, the computer, Xerox machine. You see everything in the room. The question is, did all those things appear in the room when you turned on the light? No, they were always there. Your light just wasn't on. So education is the search for the light switch of your consciousness, for you to become aware that you are aware, that you know this already. I cannot give you anything that you don't already have. How could I do that? You already have it. If you want to get into the metaphysical world, it's called the Akashic Records. It's a cosmic encyclopedia, so to speak. So that, you know, we already know this. And what our young people have to understand is that you have a divine destiny and we have to search for it. And I'm here to help you search for it, but I can't give it to you. Just like that light switch, I can't turn the light switch on. Only you can turn the light switch. I can assist you in finding it. I can assist you in you understanding how to turn it on, but I can't turn it on. Only you can turn it on. And when you turn it on, it will turn you on.
So African-centeredness, Pan-Africanism, is the mechanism by which we prepare our youth for the 21st century.
Yes, but also we have to be conscious of something else. And I ask the community, please allow me the time to be able to tell this to you, because I want to be careful how I say this. There is no such thing as an African-centered approach.
Okay.
When our ancestors in the early days, when the Twa and the Mbuti, the original human family, the Twa Mbuti of Central and South Africa, when they developed their educational system, when they developed their what they call Ma'u, which is where Ma'at comes from, in the Twa Kikongo language, Ma'u, M-A-A-U, means the living force. When it gets into Kemet, it's going to become Ma'at. But originally it was Ma'u. When they set all that up, when they set the educational system up, when they set their civilization up, when they set their departments up, when they set their government up, they never said this was for African people, because the only people that were there were African.
Right.
The reason why we have to call it African is because someone stole our legacy and they put their name on it. So now we have to say it's African-centered. Now we have to take back or claim back what someone stole from us. So that while we're teaching African-centered understanding, understand you're talking about a cosmic legacy. You're talking about a legacy that does not identify with a geographic location. It doesn't identify with a particular group of people that we call Africans. They were Africans in that geographic location. But these are the laws of the cosmos. These are natural laws. These are laws that apply throughout the world and the cosmos. And so for me, it becomes important that we as an African people understand what it is that we are transmitting to our children. And yes, we will say it's African-centered. And I do say it's African-centered. But I only say it's African-centered to distinguish the fact that Eurasians stole our legacy, put their name on it, gave it back to us contaminated. We embraced it. And now we're living a contamination. You know what Dr. Wade Nobles tells us is that he calls this experience, he says, it's like vomit. That's nasty.
Yeah, that's bad.
Effective. Whenever I tell this story, people never forget it. It's vomit. He said when the Greeks and the Romans took the African legacy, it was too rich for their intellectual enzymes to digest. So what did they do? They had to regurgitate it because it was too rich, like a rich meal. You don't have the enzymes to break it down, so you got to regurgitate it. Your body rejects it because you're not prepared for it. And that's what the Greeks did. They vomited. In the Western civilization is vomit of the African world. Everything that we are learning, math, science, all that, I tell people, look, don't throw that away. That serves a purpose.
Right.
But it's vomit because they never understood it was too rich for them. So what we have to do is, as Dr. Wade Nobles tells us, don't look at it, don't eat it. You don't want no part of it. Don't smell it. Nasty. But examine it, because in that vomit is the original meal.
Right.
And what you need to do is recook that meal. And when you recook that meal, as Africans, you have the enzymes to break it down. And so what we have to do is examine this vomit, which is Western civilization. In my case, it's Western education. And begin to put in place what the meal actually was in the arts and the sciences.
Right.
Communication arts, the physical sciences, because the communication arts really are spiritual sciences, but Eurasians can't handle spirituality, so they have to call it something else. So what we call spiritual sciences is what we today in this vomit call communication arts.
Right, right.
And it includes the performing arts, the creative arts, and the language arts.
So we're talking about teaching quite a bit here, and this kind of brings us to the next question. In terms of level of importance, how imperative is it for Black people to teach our own children?
It's mandatory. Now, okay. See, I want to be Ma'ati in my response to you. I want to be honest with you, even if what I'm saying may be a little uncomfortable. I have met many wonderful European teachers who can teach math well. I've been taught by them well. I've met ones that can teach language arts, social studies. I don't say white people shouldn't teach our, I don't say Eurasians can't teach our children. I say they shouldn't teach our children.
Right.
Because in the days and times that we're living in today, and this had nothing to do with their abilities or wherever they're coming from. I'm talking to us right now. I'm on a crusade to bring in young, interested African teachers, African American teachers, African Caribbean teachers. I am interested in showing them how to teach the children. I'm on a crusade for that. Because we can do all the talking we want to about should they teach, can they teach, will they teach? But if we don't have human people willing to teach, I say, okay, so we'll hire 20 of your teachers that you say. Okay, where are they? Well, if they're not licensed, it don't mean a thing.
Right.
So when I talk about Eurasians, and when I talk about Eurasians, I'm talking about people we today call European and Asian. I just put them all together because they're all the same. They are the northern climate people that lost pigmentation and they came out of the African world. So,
right.
Eurasia. But my thing is, we need to teach our children. It's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to go to college if you're going to get a license to teach. We also have to fundamentally understand that for those of us who may not go to college, there is still a place for you in the educational field. Because I'm working with a brother right now who is in a dilemma. He doesn't know if he wants to. He doesn't know if he wants to go into education to get his degree. He has spent a number of years in a particular area that he has become proficient in. And what I'm saying is, you don't necessarily have to go to college and get a license to teach unless you want to become a formal city, state, government teacher. There's a license. And in that license, you have to get a bachelor's degree. So I understand that. But there are people who have valuable things to teach the children. You don't have to go back to school for. You can volunteer in your neighborhood community center. You can volunteer in your church. You can volunteer where you are and become more effective, because I'll be honest with you. When I graduated from college, my degree was in international politics. I never had an education course in my life. I only became a teacher in that sense because of my experiences in Gary, Indiana. But I was into communications. I was into politics. So I thought that's how I was going to do it. But my success in that classroom, I'm going to tell you a story. When I taught in Gary, Indiana, I taught high school. And I taught radio and television to sophomores, juniors, and seniors. I was a weekend disc jockey at a newly acquired Black-owned radio station, WLTH, in Gary, Indiana. The Black Bank Seaway Bank in Chicago bought WLTH, and they brought me in to be the production manager and the weekend disc jockey. So that was my job. That's why I went to Gary. But while I was there, the teacher that taught radio and television at Roosevelt High School went on sabbatical. They needed a teacher, so they brought me. And so what and they asked me would I be willing to teach, and I did. I said sure. Now mind you, I ain't got no education courses. In the evenings I'm doing production and radio, and on the weekends I'm doing disc jockey. Okay, that's my thing. But I taught, and there was a brother came to me somewhere around Misgiving, what some people call Thanksgiving, somewhere around Misgiving, came to me and he said, I'm not going to be in school tomorrow. Here's my excuse. And when I looked at why he wouldn't be in school, is that he had to go to court being accused of accomplice to murder. And like, this brother used to come to my class with a suit and tie, now not a suit, but with a shirt and tie. He never missed a day of class. He was there every day. He did every one of his assignments for me. He participated in the class. He was my A student. And I said, hey, brother, like, how did this happen? You're my best student. You are never absent from school. You do everything that is asked of you. This was second period. I said, you're always here on time. I said, how could that be? He said, well, I'll be honest with you. Your class is the only class I come to. I come in second period and I leave just before third.
Wow.
And I said, well, brother, let me ask you, what is it that brings you to my class? And he said, I honestly feel like you respect me. That changed my life. That's what made me get into education. I left radio. They thought I was crazy. I was getting paid 5 times the amount in communications that I was getting as a teacher. And I decided, in fact, the brother that was the program director there, he told me I had to write out my resignation because nobody would believe the story I just told them. You have to be out of your mind. Here is your opportunity to get on the scene. And now all of a sudden you ready to leave? That changed my life. That brother changed my life.
Wow.
And what I'm saying is that our children deserve respect. And if you come with authenticity to our people, Black folk know authenticity because they've been bamboozled so much, they know the fakes.
Right.
But when you come with a sense of authenticity and you tell them what they in their heart know is the truth, they will ride with you.
Right.
And we need to teach our young people the truth. And we Black men, we better get some courage.
Yeah.
To face what's coming. Because if you think this is something, my mama said, never corner a rat and never trigger an insane person. Because it's the only 2 times a coward will attack you. And right now, Eurasians are feeling attacked.
Yes. Yes.
From the way China is treating African people to the way Europeans are treating African people. The time is over now. The time is up. Your time is up. And it's time for us to be able to address to our young people what we've experienced all these years and help them understand. time is up. This ain't going on no more. And I'm not waiting for no leader to come free me. I'm going to do it myself, and I'm with you as the young people, brothers. We have to get our relationship with our sisters better. We have got to begin to have a relationship between brothers and sisters that's viable, because a nation is only as strong as its weakest family.
Yes. That's very important. Very important. That story you just shared was a perfect segue into the next question. And it's very powerful, and it lets you know that we're not alone in this. What is the school to prison pipeline?
Special ed.
Okay.
You know, that's what it is. That's what it is. And when I first started teaching in 1979 was when special ed really began to take a hold in the system, like 1978, 1979. The public law that came into existence. Bilingual education was coming in very strong at this time also. And we used to have to attend staff development sessions to be introduced to the public law with special education, you know, with the least restrictive environment and all the rest of that. And so I was aware of what special ed was. And then when I went into schools, there were some schools didn't have special ed because it had just come into existence. And then I sat back and I watched how the special ed classes were formed. And what I noticed is that them young brothers in particular, but some young sisters, melanated, powerful, got something to say, ain't afraid to say it to anybody, including the teacher or the principal, they were the ones put in special ed. They were called problem children. I call them geniuses. Because when you reject a system that's not in your favor, you're not a problem. You're a genius.
Right.
And sometimes I wonder how we should be talking to our children. When they are told they failed the test, did they really fail the test, or did they just refuse to accept garbage? Got to be careful now.
Right.
People will say, well, are you encouraging them to fail? No, I'm not encouraging them to fail. I'm telling them, play the game to get out the system so you can come back and do what you were born to do and use me as an example. I'm an example. I'm the spook who sat by the door. I watched what they did. And every time I watch them, I would formulate something that would first of all, neutralize the pain that they cause, and then create a proactive approach towards education so that our children can master chemistry and physics and math. We invented it.
Right.
It's in our gene pool. It's in our DNA. So it's not about an achievement gap. Europeans cheat. And I'll tell you a story. I did a staff development, and for those that may not know the Westchester area in New York, it was in Hartsdale. And Hartsdale is a rather affluent community. And the people I was talking to, the great majority of them did not look like me. And I was talking about teaching methodologies. I was talking about multiple intelligences. And multiple intelligence is the theory that we are all intelligent on different levels. And that reading and math may not, it's an area that you show proficiency, but it's not necessarily the only place that you show proficiency. You can be a genius in music. You can be a genius in self-reflection and internal views and come out with some dynamic information. You can be a genius in art, which is the spatial intelligence. You can be a genius in kinesthetics, which is sports and performing arts. You know, just look at Simone Biles. That sister's so bad. They tell her, no, you can't do that. And she say, why can't I do that? And they say, because we can't do it.
Right, right.
But what does she say? I'm going to do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
We can do that in the classroom. We can do that in math and science. It's that we have expressed ourselves in the genius of our kinesthetic movement and our knowledge in basketball and baseball and sports. And I mean, it's a wonderful thing, but that's not the only place that we are geniuses in.
Right, right.
We are geniuses in the social aspect in terms of interacting. That's what politicians are and lawyers are. And you can be a genius in logic, which is your math and your science and your reasoning skills. And you can be a genius in language. Paul Robeson was a genius in just about all of those, but he mastered a lot of different languages and sang in them too.
Right.
And so multiple intelligences demands that you are able as an educator, even as a parent, to be able to identify some of the geniuses that's in children that you can help them get better at.
Right, right.
Now, I do this presentation and a psychiatrist that was in attendance comes up to me. And he said, that's very interesting. See, because he's one of those like cool Europeans, you know, yeah, hey, what's going on? Yeah, you know, he want to be friends. He said, let me tell you something. He said, you know, white children are not that intelligent. He said, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. He said, I'm a psychiatrist. And if you tell people that my name or tell people that I told you this, I'll deny. But I want you to know something because I saw something in your presentation that I think you need to know. He said the children in this community come from very affluent families. And he said for $1,500, just before it's time for them to take the test, maybe around January, beginning of February, what they do is they send their children to me. And I certify them as special education. So that when they're taking the SAT and the state test, they get time and a half. Because when you're in special ed, you get time and a half. So if there's a 3-hour test, you take it and you get 4.5 hours. You get an hour and a half. You get time and a half. He said, they pay me $1,500. But he said, what they do is that they pay me part when I certify them in special ed. But then in May, the same children come back to me. And then I do another analysis of them, and then I decertify them. And that takes them out of special ed and puts them back in general education. So a lot of these people that you see out here that they say they're doing all that great, no, they're not doing great. Because when our with the lack of support that they have, the lack of opportunities with 3 hours, we're doing pretty good.
Right.
And for them, they cheat. They're not as intelligent as we think they are. They really are. I've been around them long enough to know that. But we have the aura of European insecurity that they call white supremacy. I call it European inferiority, insecurity, because they're not who they pretend to be. And so what the point I want to make with you, Brother Taki, is that it is not an achievement gap. It's an opportunity gap. We have to afford our children opportunities. Whether we like it or not, every child should have a laptop in their house. The future is laptop. Look at what we're doing here now. Okay, this could have been a presentation that you sponsored. Remember when we was down, when I was with Brother M. Fudishi and you came to the presentation down by, across from Juniors, what's that, St. John's or LIU, something like that?
Yes, LIU, do the LIU.
Okay. You know, that could have been a presentation, but right now, look at what we're doing now.
We used to go back to the Nubian bookstore on Jamaica Avenue and used to come through the presentations down in the basement.
That's right. There we go. Yes.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Same exact thing. This is the new technology. This is the new way. And also the cell phone. Right. Because there's folk watching this on cell phone right now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we spoke about a different, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, man, I'll follow you.
We spoke about different aspects of levels on variants of intelligence. And it seems like you and I are kind of playing sports here because we kind of keep passing the ball back and forth. But on that note, what is emotional intelligence and how can we develop it?
Emotional intelligence?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go back to the multiple intelligences. Let's go back to the 7. You see, and again, let's go back to Howard Gardner. Dr. Howard Gardner was the one that came up with this concept. It's African. I appreciate what Dr. Gardner did, But he didn't invent nothing new. This comes out of Africa. I can show you teaching methodologies that come out of communities that could be considered primitive that apply multiple intelligences in their educational system.
Wow. Okay.
And the idea is the fact that I'm going to go with the 7 because he's added another one, but I'm afraid of that because when Europeans start talking about spiritual intelligence, I have problems with that because they don't even know what spirituality is as far as I'm concerned. So when you start talking about a spiritual intelligence, that's sort of kind of telling me that some folk are holier than others. I have a problem with that.
Right.
I believe that what he calls spiritual intelligence is the actual fuel that drives all the other 7 intelligences. So that you have music. See, these are academic intelligences. You have music. You have spatial, which is art. You have kinesthetic, which is movement. You have logic, which is math and science and reasoning skills. And you have language. Then you have the intrapersonal and the interpersonal. Intrapersonal is self-reflective. Interpersonal is social. Now, let's take these 5 academics and let's put them away. You're asking for the emotional intelligences. The emotional intelligences are the intrapersonal and the interpersonal. Your self-reflection, going within to find that power, and social or interpersonal. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Back in the day, Dr. King, I've heard stories about Dr. King and Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, dynamic activist, brother and pastor. They would have a meeting, a planning meeting. Dr. King, Reverend Shuttlesworth, Andrew Young, probably Jesse Jackson, everybody that was part of the thing. And Dr. King would go around the room and ask everybody what they thought would be the best way to do this. Now, Fred Shuttlesworth wasn't like that. Fred Shuttlesworth was the type of person, like at the end of the meeting, he'd say, Martin, man, why'd you go around the room and ask everybody all these questions? Man, you know what you got to do. You wasted time asking them all those questions. And Dr. King would say, I know where I'm going, but somebody in the room may know how to get there better. What the interpersonal or the social is that before you come to your own conclusion, you go out to seek other people's opinion, take it all in, and then come to your own conclusion. That's an interpersonal learner. That's an emotional intelligence. The other intelligence is the intrapersonal, which means that you go inside yourself to find the answer before you come out to share it with other people. It's like when I used to teach and there was children that just didn't participate in class. They did not speak. There were some teachers that would ask a question and then they would try to force that intrapersonal learner to respond. And what happens in the intrapersonal mind is that if that teacher and that student gets to know the teacher, what happens is that it triggers something in the mind of the child. Say, oh, I hope they don't ask me. I hope they don't ask me. So that the moment that teacher asks a question, that child is so busy hoping not to be called, they a lot of times don't even hear what the question is. But in my class, I used to say things like, Kwame, man, I know you got it going on, brother. So I just want you to think about the question. When you get ready, raise your hand, we'll go to you. But I just want you to think about it. What I did is I released Kwame to be able to think.
Right. Took the pressure and anxiety off of it.
Say again?
Took the pressure and anxiety out of it.
Exactly.
Let them be comfortable.
Exactly. Now that goes back to special ed, because the concept of special ed is to teach children in the least restrictive environment. And so when you understand your student, when you understand the emotional intelligence, and by the way, we have a thing in America, particularly game shows, everything that we do, we think that smart is when you have the answer quick.
Right.
That's not true. Because part of the problem we in today is because too many people gave stupid answers too soon.
Right.
They should have thought about it before they were willing to show how ignorant they were in their response. And I have found that people who take it in and think about it come out with some of the most phenomenal responses to the question. Everybody don't react the same way. Some people are quiet and shy, but those students are listening. The students that I'm talking about, they're not responding because they're not listening. They're responding because they are dynamically intrapersonal. I'll give you another example about spatial intelligence, which is artistic. Engineers, painters, sculptors. In 1992, I was asked to visit schools because that was the year that the movie Malcolm X came out. And they asked me if I would go to different schools and talk about Malcolm to the students who were going to go to the movie. Okay. That, you remember with Black Panther, everybody was giving away free tickets and sending their, well, that's the way it was with Malcolm back then in the Bronx. It was people just saying they were sending classes to see Malcolm X. And so I would go and I would prepare the students for it. And they had me come in and they would combine classes. So there was like 2 or 3 classes combined in this one big classroom. It was a science lab class because there were sinks along the wall. And so there were students sitting in chairs. There were students that were sitting on the floor. There were students that were sitting on the sinks as I was talking. And so I noticed there was a brother off into the corner, and this brother was doing something, you know, feverishly. He was just doing it. And I kept talking. He was just doing his thing. Long story short, on my way out the classroom, I had to walk out and pass that part of the room because the door was off to that side there. And as I passed the brother, he stopped me. He said, "Oh, thank you so much, Brother Booker T, for coming." This was before I corrected my name. He said, "Thank you, Brother Booker T, for, you know, coming and talking." He said, "Man, you really, I mean, now I really feel Malcolm now. I'm looking forward to the movie." He said, "Here, this is for you." And what he had been doing was he was drawing in block letters Malcolm X's name. If I had stopped him from drawing, he would have stopped listening to me because he was assimilating the information as he was drawing. How many folk know that there's people that like they doodle when they're talking to someone on the phone?
Right.
And that is because that is like a synthese. A synthese means when you're using 2 senses at the same, 2 or more senses at the same time. So that you are using touch at the same time you're using listening. You're using feel, the drawing, the artistry. You're using your eyes to see the drawing at the same time you're listening. And if somebody were to stop you from any one of those senses, you would shut down most of your senses. So as a teacher, going into that classroom and talking about Malcolm, there were some teachers that would have said, "Listen, put that away. Listen to what I'm saying about Malcolm. Don't be drawing while I'm talking to you." There's another way to look at it that says that the only way he can hear you is if he draws. And so these are the examples of how we have to conform to what true intelligence is.
Right.
You know, when we was back in the day, we was under the baobab tree learning from the master teacher. We was outside enjoying the sun and listening. You know, we'd get up and run from one side to another side in a community that we trusted. Now we're learning in caves because that's what classrooms are. They're caves. As opposed to learning outdoors underneath the baobab tree. You know, I'm not saying that there were not temples, and I'm not saying that there were not schools in Africa. But what I'm saying is that a lot of the activities that occurred in our world happen outdoors, not indoors. Right. In fact, in many cases, the only thing we did indoors was sleep.
Right. Right. You know, I feel like you're kind of in my head because the next one is just like, it's so on point right now. speaking of the analogy of classrooms being as caves and learning outside, my next question is, would you recommend homeschooling?
If that's what you wanted to do. Because everybody's not ready for homeschooling. If there's one thing this pandemic taught folk, a good appreciation for teachers. Folk are getting hip to what teachers have to go through.
Right.
I spent 8 hours in a classroom at the time with children. I knew children better than their parents did.
I'm sure.
And that is because of the time that, and rightfully so, because parents can only spend but so much time. If your child's in school and you're working, each day you spend maybe 2 hours, maybe to, they come home, they eat and they do their homework. If they're in after school, you pick them up at 6. They've done their homework. They'll come home, they'll eat, maybe some nice conversation, but then they're in bed by 8, 9 o'clock. So you've only spent 2 hours a day with your child. I spent 7. And I spent 7 hours with upwards of 40 children at a time in my classroom. So that if you want to, but you got to know how to homeschool though. You see, that's the key. Because a lot of parents think that, okay, now I have to teach all the subjects. What I do is I go into communities and I organize homeschooling networks. And by that, I mean, you might be a person that you're a nurse. Well, you could be the science teacher. You might have somebody else that's an accountant. They could be the math teacher. Somebody else could have been someone that's very physical, that does yoga and runs and grew up in athletics. Well, you could be the gym teacher. You might have somebody else that has a restaurant. Well, you can be the one that feeds the children. So one parent or two parents don't have to teach everything. If you organize, you can get the best to teach the best, as opposed to becoming overwhelmed thinking that you got to take out a math book now. Now you got to do this. I mean, you can have science class, take the children to the zoo.
Right.
You can go to the botanical gardens and teach botany. You can grow your own garden in the backyard. There's so much, but you got to organize it. And what I find many parents, they sit back when they hear my presentation, they say, I never thought of it like that, because they're so overwhelmed. Look, I want my child up out of that school. They're racist. They're horrible. They're not teaching. My child is not learning. They want to put him in special ed. They're trying to give him all these drugs. I need him out. I don't want him in no more. But now what am I going to do? You know you don't want them to go through pain, but what is education? How do you educate? You have to organize, and everybody coming to the community, it means that you could take a break during the day. So when that accountant is teaching math, you could be doing your thing. When the nurse is teaching science, you could be doing your thing. You could be doing so many different things within the community, but you got to organize it so that it makes sense to the people that are doing this. Also, as it relates to kinesthetic, you can get children moving around the community. And this way, it gets a lot of that melanated energy to be able to get out. You know, you can even run over to the other house, or you can do it in a way that they can exercise. You might even throw a soccer ball where they have to kick the ball to the next place that they're going. There's so many creative ways that you can create an educational system for our children. This system has failed. Not just us, it's failed their children too.
Wow. Speaking of failing children, the children today are being bombarded with all types of different, confusing information about who they are, what they're growing up to be. So sexuality in children, what is a good age to start having that conversation? The reason why I ask that question is because, I see a lot of children talking about sex at a far too early age than previously was, and now it's not even just heterosexual relationships, but it's all types. So I think it's important. I guess at some point we need to start having this conversation. What do you think is a good age to talk to them about stuff like this?
Well, let me tell you a story. See, because I'm a teacher, so I have a lot of stories, and a lot of times I can get my point across in a story. This little girl, Sally, go to her mother and say, Mommy, how did I get here? Mother said, okay, there's the question. How did I get here? Okay, so she explained about the birds and the bees and about men and women and about what men have and what women have and what they do to make babies. And at the end of this long drawn out story, Mama asked Sally, did you understand what I said? And she said, no, not really. Not really. Because Johnny said that he came home by cab. All I wanted to know is, how did we get here? So here's the story. The girl was asking a different question. The girl was really asking, Johnny had told her that when he was born, they took a cab from the hospital home. What Sally was asking was, how did we get home? Did we take the bus? Did we drive? Did we take a cab? Mother never asked Sally, what do you mean? And because she didn't ask, what do you mean? She assumed in her mind that she was talking about the physical act that brings children into the world. So to answer your question, you always ask the child the question before you answer. What's the core of the question that you're asking me? So that you can answer them on the level that they're asking the question. Don't want to go over their head. Stay within what they're asking you. So you ask, what is the proper time? It's according to each child. Because how much is sexuality being exposed to them? Look at them in the street. You know, when I used to walk with our children, my wife and I have 2 girls and 1 boy. When they were very young, back in the days where there was like magazine stands and things like that, I would be walking in the street with them. And there was a time that like Penthouse and Playboy had to cover the front. Okay. But it came a time in my children's generation, they didn't cover nothing. It was all hanging out. In fact, it was hanging off the shelves. And my, like when I would pass, I would ask my daughter, I said, what do you think about what you're looking at? She said, well, that's nasty. I said, well, what do you mean by nasty? Because in another way, it's not nasty. It's beautiful. It's just being presented to you in a way that should not be. But human bodies are beautiful. If you go back into Africa, you'll see people celebrating beautiful human bodies. There's nothing. It's not that the body's nasty. It's what's going on in your mind that's nasty. And so children are picking up concepts as it relates to their body that leads to them wanting to cut it up to make it look better, or to add this or to add that to look better. And so I believe the time to talk to children now, if you're asking, okay, at what point do you actually talk about it? I would say if you ain't gotten caught up in it at a certain age, because right now we have to talk to them because it's out there no matter what. There are teachers that are coming to school dressed in a way that's very provocative. And our children are picking this up. The rap music, the entertainment, stuff that I'm seeing is PG-13 used to be R when I was young. Right. And what becomes important for us to begin to develop clearly is our own version of this. And Taki and Felicia and family who listen to this, we have to have some open, honest, and respectful conversations about sexuality. Very open and very honest. And until we do that, we're not going anyplace. The LGBTQ community, they have won the war that they waged. We have to have conversations, honest, open conversations. We have family members, loved ones, people that we look up to who are LGBTQ. What are we going to do? Period. We need to have open and honest and respectful conversations with our community. And we have to come to conclusions that are in the best interest of all of our people, not some of them, all of them. And we must be dynamic, and we must be willing to speak out without fear of repercussions. We have to get to this point. We have to have very serious conversations about pedophilia in our Black community. Because we ain't talking about that. We're letting that stuff go. Our young ladies and our young men must be protected from deviant predators, be it homosexual or heterosexual. We got to speak on it. And we're not speaking on it. We're diverting attention away from the real issue. There are many probably on this line right now listening to this conversation. There are sisters who have been inappropriately touched by some of the men in the community. And we're not talking about it. We'd rather divert the conversation somewhere else and blame white folk. I'm talking Black now. We in the community now. This is a family conversation.
Right.
We have to start talking about this. It's happening too much in our community. Many of our children are being violated. I know because when I was in the Board of Education, when I was in the superintendent's office, one of my responsibilities was I was in charge of what's called incident reports. And incident reports, we had 35 schools. We had 27 elementary schools and 8 middle schools. And it was my job to collect all of the incidences, like if a child was attacked, if there was a fight, if there was any type of abuse, which is not just sexual abuse, it's physical abuse, and it can also be emotional abuse. It was my job to collect that data. And I did that for 3 years, back probably in the early 90s. That was my job. That was part of my portfolio, to respond back to the superintendent to let him know if there was a stabbing in this school, or if there was an outbreak, if there was a gang incident or street organization incident in the school. It was my job to let the superintendent know. So I had a record for 3 years of all the things I saw happening in the community. And unfortunately, I was the one that had to go into situations that was very dangerous for me. If a young lady was being abused or a young man was being abused in any way, shape, I had to find a way to negotiate my way into that house to save that child from the problems that that child was facing. And it was very dangerous. We have to have open conversations. We have to have real conversations.
Wow.
And we can't be pulling no stuff up here. And let me tell you something else while we're at it. I would say, give or take the numbers, it's not exact, but of all of the sexual abuse cases that I dealt with, at least 66, let's say 2/3 of the incidents of inappropriate touching or reactions in homes between an older person and a child was heterosexual. There are more young girls, and also between an older woman and a younger boy, and an older man and a younger girl. It was hard to even compare the numbers. Far more older men inappropriately interacting with young girls. We're not talking about this, family. And right now, there might be people on this chat that could tell me stories of their experiences. And it comes in many different forms. And as a teacher, I reported a teacher one time, watching what that teacher was doing. And I said, not on my watch. And this was when I was a teacher in a school in the Bronx. Not on my watch. I'm not going to watch you do that. You ain't never going to do that in my presence. Because even if I can't get you legally, I'm going to get you outside. We're going to have street justice on this. You better hope they remove you from the school, because if you stay here, trust me, right about 2 months from now, you ain't going to be here no more. Because we ain't gonna have this here. You ain't doing this in my presence, and you're not. So if you thought that before I came here, you could do that, I don't know how long you got away with it, but your time is up right now. There was another time I called somebody out right in the public area. We were doing a big class. I called them out. I said, "What you got your hand over there for?" There's a lot of ways that adults can do it. And when you're a predator, you learn how to prey on them, on the weakness. Wow. I know we weren't planning on going so deep into this conversation, brother.
No, I mean, this is what it's for. This is definitely what it's for.
Listen, you know, I'm not playing. We got to talk, family.
Right.
We have to cleanse ourselves of the pain of 400 plus years of this garbage that's been put on us. I understand. We're just keeping the cycle going. But somewhere the cycle has to stop, and our children are precious. We have to protect them, and we have to say and do what needs to be done.
Right.
We have to brave the fires of hell for them, because if not us, then who? They can't defend themselves like an adult can defend them. It has to stop.
Right, right. On that note, how can we apply our culture to develop society's productive citizens?
By moving them through a process of searching for self. When I wrote Spirituality Before Religion, the purpose of it was to search for the truth as best I could. And what became important to me was to realize that each and every one of us is the creator having a human experience. There's 2 cosmic laws. Ma'at has 42, and all of them are applicable, particularly when you get specific, but there are basically 2 cosmic laws. The first law is realize that you are the creator having a human experience. Don't look for God out here. Don't even look for God in here. Okay, earlier today, I saw God. In fact, I watched God brush his teeth. I watched God wash his face. Then I watched God get on this computer and start this conversation, because I am God having a human experience. Felicia, you are God having a human experience. Taki, you are God having a human experience. Samuel Martin, all of us. King Simon, that's my man. You are God having a human experience. Michelle Jewell, you are God having a human experience. The second cosmic law is to treat the creator's creations the way you treat yourself. Respect the trees, respect the animals, respect the fish, respect all of the creations, and treat them like you treat yourself as the creator. Those are the 2 basic laws. Because if people live like that, if people really believed in that, this world would be a beautiful place. And so in educating our children, they have to search within first. Here's another thing. I want to go back to when you asked about emotional intelligence. I was teaching a 7th grade language arts class. And I was teaching science, but I was in the class where the homeroom teacher was language arts. And I began to teach the scientific method, you know, creating a question and gathering information and, you know, the 6 steps of scientific method. And then I said, well, let me put it to you another way. I'm going to show it to you as it relates to multiple intelligences. And the class, being children, were doing their thing. And I say, okay, now let's get that attention over here now. Come on, let's focus. Come on now. And what the teacher told me after was very interesting. She said, one of the things I've come to realize is before you even teach academic intelligence, you've got to teach emotional intelligence. Classroom discipline comes from emotional intelligence, not academic intelligence. And here's the 4 steps that I teach. It's a box, okay? And in the box on the top, and you put a cross in the middle, so you have 4 smaller boxes. On the top, you label it knowledge, And then next to that, management. Along the sides, you have intrapersonal self-reflection or interpersonal, which is social. Go back up to the top box. The first thing, and our ancestors said it, and they carved it on the walls of Kemet. They carved it on the walls of Kush. They had it all along what we call HAPI. The first step in life is self-knowledge. The next step is self-management. Self-management we call self-discipline. Because when you know yourself, you can discipline yourself. Underneath that, you have the social knowledge, social management we call leadership. And whenever I dealt with people or students, I looked to see where they were. Because if you're having a problem in leadership, well, do you know who you're leading, which is social knowledge? And if you don't know who you're dealing with, then have you disciplined yourself, which is self-management? And if you haven't disciplined yourself, then do you know yourself, which is self-knowledge? I'll give you an example. Another story. Brother Taki, I got a whole bunch of stories, man. I'm a kindergarten teacher. To keep children interested, you got to be telling stories. I was in class one time, and I was teaching. And in the classroom, there were open seats, throughout the class. And then the class was, children were there. And a young lady came in, and I saw when she came in, she looked all around, and she chose to come up around and to sit in the front. She came in, she sat in the front, okay? There was a young brother, that was just staring at her. And she said, I hate when you stare at me. I told you don't be staring at me. Now, okay, now what brother gonna do? Now he happy because now he got her attention and he liked her, okay? And so he just staring at her just for that attention, just staring at her. She said, if you keep staring, I'm gonna smack you. Okay, what brother gonna do? Staring at her. What sister do? Smack. Just as she smacked, a teacher came in and told her, in fact, it was her teacher told her to go down to the principal. So she was down in the principal's office. Okay. And so afterwards, after everything happened, I went down, I saw that she was there sitting, and I sat next to her. I said, now, you know something? I said, now, I saw you when you came in the classroom. And there were a lot of seats that you could have sat in. But you chose to sit in that seat. And then she's going to smile now. Because she like him too. I mean, this is middle school. They're getting, they're at that point. And I said, but you knew that the moment you sat next to him, he was going to stare at you. And she smiled because she knew. I said, but because of that, you were willing, because you really wanted to hit him anyway, but you really probably want to hold his hand, don't you? She gets all cute now. You really wanted to hold her, but the only way you could express it was by smacking him, and the only thing he could do to get your attention is stare at you. So you both did something in a negative manner that eventually got people in trouble. So here's the point that I'm making about the self-knowledge, the self-discipline, knowing other people, and managing other people. We do that as adults sometimes. But you see, you knew yourself. And if you knew that you didn't want him to stare at you, why did you sit next to him? Why didn't you have the discipline to sit in another seat? Maybe check him out another time. But did you know yourself? And if you knew yourself, why didn't you discipline yourself to sit in another seat? Because you knew what he was going to do. Because you kept saying, I hate when you keep staring at me. So he's probably doing it to you all the time, which is because he likes you and he wants your attention. And you like him and you want his attention. But look at what happened. Now you're sitting outside the principal's office. And if your mama come, you know what's going to happen now. So when you know those four dynamics, self-knowledge, self-management, social knowledge, and social management, when that becomes the core of your emotional approach in life, then you always know where to go back to if you find yourself not being able to accomplish something as it relates to emotional intelligence. But you have to teach that before you even get into the academics. Because, you know, you can't teach something academically if somebody's emotionally unstable, if they're having problems emotionally. And brother, black folk in America was born in emotional instability.
Right.
We have to become stable out of instability. That's why I say if you are black in 1920 in the United States, I got nothing but love and respect for you, because you are a miracle.
Yeah.
Because you ain't supposed to be here. You're supposed to be back in Africa, stark raving mad or dead.
Right.
But the fact that we're here doing this is a miracle right here. And the fact that there are people on watching, that's a miracle. Right. But we don't know that because we think that it's just become natural. No, everything that could have been put against you has been put against you, yet still you rise. And for that, I love and respect us as a people.
I say. So with that said, we just passed the 99th anniversary of the Tulsa riots or the massacre that occurred in Greenwood section of Tulsa, Oklahoma. What can we do today to develop Black communities like that in the 21st century?
I think we're already doing it. And in fact, I think that social media allows that to happen. This is a new community here. But in answer to your question, just watch what they did. They started with the most elementary things. They started with sanitation. The entire corporate business of Black Wall Street started when people started their own sanitation department. They cleaned up their community. And out of that built all of the other organizations and businesses that would come out of that. The cleaners, the banks. The banks were giving better loans to white people than the white banks were.
Wow.
We can do this. We just got to focus. We have to focus. And we have to understand that we're not inventing anything. This has been done before. Our people are magnificent. And you don't have to go back to Kemet or Kush or Twa for a classical African civilization. Just go to the plantation. Those are some classical Africans on the plantation. They were classy. They had class. And they were able to build in the most horrific times a civilization. They were given the worst of everything. All the foods that was throwaway was given to them. And our sisters and our brothers smacked some spices up on them, made them gourmet. Japanese don't come to New York without saying, I've been to Sylvia's. We have made garbage gold. In sports, it's the same exact thing. That's why they didn't want us in sports. They didn't want us in sports because they wanted to integrate. It's the same thing in the military, because my father was in World War II. My father was in the 369th, which was the Black department. The reason why they integrated the troops in World War II was because they used to use the Black troops to send through first. And if the Japanese, in this particular case, because my father was in Okinawa, if the Japanese fired down on the Black troops, then the white troops didn't go through because they knew the Japanese were there. But then the Japanese got hip to what was going on and started letting the Black troops through. And so when the white troops came through, that's when they were bombarded. That's why they integrated the services. They didn't want to be nice. They did it because their game didn't work anymore. Their game didn't work anymore. Not only that, because the brothers and sisters were some of the most dynamic warriors in any war that's ever fought. If we fought for our own liberation the way we fought for the United States, boy, we'd be free.
Right.
We are some bad Nubian warriors. We just don't know who our enemy is. And so when you look at what happened in sports, okay, they didn't want Black. But, you know, another part of the story was the Black baseball teams used to go outside the white organized baseball team and challenge them and tell them, you ain't nothing. We'll beat you anytime. Let's play. Play us. Play the Black Cubans. Okay, play one of the Negro leagues. Players, we'll beat you. And mind you, these black baseball players learned by sticks and rocks how to play baseball. They caught with their bare hands or used to make gloves to catch. And so eventually, the white baseball teams were embarrassed. And so they said, well, I mean, these Negroes are outside here talking about us and all the rest of that. What are we going to do? That's when they started integrating. The same way they integrated the military, they integrated sports. But what was the problem? Once Jackie Robinson got in and all the brothers got in and they started playing, they had to make the baseball fields larger. Because black folk was just lobbing the ball. They said, because, okay, give faith to Babe Ruth. I appreciate Babe Ruth and supporting black folk. Okay, I understand that. Okay, but let's put that to the side for a minute. Babe Ruth was not hitting those home runs in the same kind of arena that black folk did. It's just the way it is. When we got into basketball, we used to use trash cans to play basketball. We used to practice by throwing just anything we could through the hoop. We did not have the opportunities that the white basketball players had. But once they let blacks get into the basketball arena, you had folk like Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar getting in there. And I mean, they started throwing those balls like a hook shot and all the rest of that. The European players weren't used to that, and dribbling between the legs and all the rest of that. They didn't do that. They used to just dribble the ball right down and shoot. Come back, dribble and shoot. Black folks started doing things around their head. The Harlem Globetrotters changed the whole scene.
Right.
Then you have Arthur Ashe, and you have changing tennis. And then here come the Williams sisters. Even men are afraid of the Williams sisters. Serena and Venus, phenomenal. Changed the game. And out of them coming through the system, now we have the younger sisters playing. Tiger Woods. Okay, I understand cabellation. I understand all that. So I'm talking about his game. Let's focus on the game. He brought more young African Americans into golf for the first time. For that, I appreciate his exposure and what he did. All the other social issues, all the other I understand that, but I'm going to put that to the side for a minute because of what he actually was able to achieve. This is science. This is not personal. Then you have Simone Biles. Then you have our brother from Jamaica, Usain Bolt. That when he wins, he gets into that profile. See, he's not bragging that he's better than everybody else. He's just saying, I'm good. I am God having a human experience. And I got my stuff together. He wasn't, but you see, in the Eurasian mind, that seems like bragging because that's what they do to people. And through projection, they think that when we do it, we're doing it for the same reasons they're doing it, but they're demented. We're not. We're doing it because we just got that flavor, because that's how we roll. We are good at what we do. And when we achieve that, we let ourselves know that. High five, smack, however we do it, there's something that we do to let folk know. We brought that into sports.
Right.
And so, all that I just told you, we can do the same thing in the classroom. Once they open that classroom, like they opened up sports and entertainment, once they open up that classroom, let me in that classroom. And I will create combinations of Malcolm X and Paul Robeson and Harriet Tubman and a little bit of Nat Turner too.
Wow, that's deep. So talking about those combinations in business, today's been a resurgence in the support or the call for the support of Black businesses. And we've seen an uptake in that. What more can or should we be doing to improve our economic standing?
Put $20 in your pocket. And once a month, if you like to march, see, people like to march. If you want to march to the nearest Black-owned business. When I visited a college in Richmond, Virginia, And in the presentation, I was talking to them about a concept of a power march. And I said to put $20 in your pocket. Start with $20, okay? Because I don't want to get out there. Start with $20. That's something we all can afford. Start with $20. Students march to the nearest Black-owned business and spend your money there. The next month, $20 in your pocket, march to the nearest Black-owned business. When my son was very young, I had an auto mechanic. He was a brother. And whenever I would get my car serviced by the brother, I would always, when it was time to get the car back, I would bring my son with me, Haru. And I would always give Haru the money to pay him. Because how many times in our children's lives do they put money in a Black hand? Just the visual of looking at a Black man, my son, as a young brother, putting money in the hand of a Black man is something that most young Black people don't do for a long time. Most time we put it in the hand of the Chinese man in the restaurant, or we put it in the Italian or the European in the pizza store, or we give it to somebody in one of the other areas, but we never give money actually visually. I wanted my son to visualize giving a Black man money. These are little things which, see, because I've been with children, I can understand certain things. There are things that are very powerful that you can start to do on a regular basis. If you go and you're going to buy incense, or you're going to buy a book or something from a vendor on the street, give the money to the child to give to the vendor, so that the child can actually feel that energy, that Black energy of giving money to a person that looked like them. These are small things we can start doing right now. When you get into the larger picture, and when you look at what's going on, what we have to do is just create and organize distribution centers of money. And they're there. They have them in Atlanta by Black. They have them in the places around the country. And I'm sure that people who are online now know that there are many different types of distribution centers where you can purchase things from African and African-American owned vendors. We have to start consciously doing this. And we have to start to want to do this. You know, you might want to go into a African-American owned restaurant if that's what you're doing. If you're a vegan, go into an African-American vegan restaurant. Get something to eat. Okay, just the other day I brought Haru, Taki, and those from New York would know what I'm talking about. I took them to Uptown Juice Bar on 125th Street this past Sunday. You know, you don't always have to go to Crack Donald or Murder King or Haunted Castle or Sunken Donuts. So restaurant where people are cooking food.
Right. You actually kind of opened the door for the next question, and you kind of touched on it somewhat, but I kind of asked it anyway. What mechanisms should we put in place to teach our children about money and how to handle it?
Oh my goodness. Oh, listen, man, let me tell you something. I always handle my money on the backside. I don't give people money showing dead prez. Okay. All of my money is see, we have to respect money. That's the first. We have to gain a respect for what money is. Money is not economics. The word economics comes from the Greek word oikos, O-I-K-O-S, which means environment or home. So the original concept of economics was to know your home, because they were agriculturalists. Know your home, hunters and gatherers. Know your home, know your environment, know how to flourish in your environment. It wasn't money. It became economics. Economics has become money because Europe, as Dr. Jeffries teaches us, is people poor, land poor, resource poor. They don't have anything. So they had to create an illusion that would represent something. And that was money. Because money don't mean nothing. Just like they changed that big head dollar from the small head dollar. You know, the fact that they could do that means that tomorrow they could tell you monopoly money is what we're using now and not U.S. currency. Whatever they tell you, in God, you better trust. So that when we're dealing with these concepts and we're looking at these different things that we can begin to do, first and foremost, have the children deal with your dollar bills. Turn every dollar bill over, and every one of them is a comedic symbol. Handle your money that way, instead of where you have the dead prez. Normally we have dead prez. That's what we call the front of the bill. Well, the front of the bill is the back of my bills. I handle my money with the comedic temples, from the $1 bill to the $5 bill to the 10, 20, 50, 100. You flip them over, it's all African. It's all comedic. That's the first thing. Just the way I handle my money changes. Not just that, I always, and this is what Dr. John Henry Clark taught me, because when he lost his eyesight, he went to the guild, the lighthouse, where people who are visually impaired go and they learn how to function in a society. And he taught me about how they taught him how to feel money, how to handle money, so you know the difference between a $1 bill, a $5 bill, because when you're blind, you don't know the difference. And what he taught me was to always separate your money. So for instance, I'll have all my $1 bills, all my $5 bills, all my $10 bills, all my $20 bills. I'll always have the lesser bill in the front, and I'll always fold it over, so that if I go into a store and something is $19.95, I don't pull out a wad of bills going through what I got. I know that in the back is a $20 bill. I can lift it right up and pay. If something is $9.99, I know I can go in front of the $20 bill in order to take the $10 bill out. If something is $4.99, I know where the $5 bill is. I know where all my money is on my body. And that way I can function. As just knowing that means that you have control over your money. You know your money. You respect your money. And if you respect your money will respect you. That's what I begin with. Children used to love that, by the way, you know. And they say, can we do that with the coins too? I said, sure you can. But the coins ain't gonna be the same as the paper bills, but you can do the same thing. You can put all your pennies and nickels in one side and all your dimes and quarters in another if you want to do it like that. But children just enjoyed that concept, and then they started to stare at the back of the bills. And that's what I taught them about Kemet, through money. Because they're ready to learn through money.
Right.
In fact, if you get on a train and if you want everybody's attention, just pull out a wad of bills. Everybody be staring at you. Because there's something about money, man. People be staring at you.
Yeah, this is true.
Reasons, but they stare at you, man.
Right. So when we talk about children and money and other things, what is the roadmap to develop our children to be leaders?
Well, I would say start with yourself. Leadership to me is lead by example. Lead by example. When in fact, not just with children, but with everybody. Because children are watching you, whether they're alone with you or with your around other people. They're watching you. And if they respect and love you, they're going to follow you. Lead by example. But the first thing we have to do, you can't teach them how to be leaders. You have to be a leader and allow them to experience what leadership is.
Right.
But we have to do that. And we have to tell them the truth. Don't ever tell a child something and not do it.
Right. So on that note, what advice would you give the young Black men and Black women, young sisters and brothers, to protect themselves and dealing with the police? We know what's going on. It's been going on for a long time. This stuff is not new. It's just what's happening today. But in terms of the approach, being stopped, being harassed, what advice would you give young sisters and brothers to do when they're confronted by cops?
Address them as yes sir, no sir. You know, there's a sister, you may know her, Taki. Her name was Carol Taylor. She wrote a book called The Little Black Book. I taught reading out of that book. The idea for me is you have to understand the temperament and the character of a predator. I'm concerned that everybody's trying to turn upside down the police department. But it's everywhere. You have them in teaching. You have bus drivers. You have nurses. You have doctors. You have computer analysts. The thing about police is that because they have a gun, they have a decision over life and death. And that's what makes them stand out, because they can literally kill you. But what about menticide? What about all the teachers that are killing or attempting to kill the minds of our children? So that my thing is to stay out of harm's way, for one thing. You got a wolf outside your door. You know it's a wolf. You saw it. If you step outside your door, you better be prepared for the wolf. If you step outside your door unprepared for the wolf and the wolf bites you, you can't complain. You knew it was a wolf when you looked out your window. When I deal with police, and again, you know, we always have to say this other part, and I'll say it, but we always have to say this. I have known some phenomenal human beings who happen to be police, who have come into the community with the express purpose of protecting the community against anything that might bring harm. So I said it, but now I know a lot that don't feel that way. And I know a lot that are just waiting for you or I to do something so they can kill us. Because the nature of the wolf is a predator, and the police that I'm talking about are predators. They get up in the morning and they decide to come into our community after they drive 2 hours from their community, because they know how to handle white folk. They're real friendly. Hey, Joe, how you doing? Yeah, everything's good. You going to come to dinner tonight? Yeah. They know how to act civil in their neighborhood. But when they come into ours, something comes over them, where they turn from that, Joe, into a wolf. Our young brothers, having been one, on fire when I was young, I understand. But when they stop you, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. That's how your mama gonna see you tonight. As opposed to what happened with our brothers and sisters through the years. Should you have to do that? Of course not. That's not the point. What I'm saying is that in the presence of a wolf, you better know how to act in the presence of a wolf, or else mommy and daddy not gonna see you tonight. And we'll have to come and bury you, because that's the nature of the predator. That's where we are right now. And I understand nobody wants to be standing up here, be taking this nonsense from people. But I don't want you dead either, because you have a divine purpose. And if you get in the way of that predator, if you go out unprepared, something possible can happen. I understand your anger. I appreciate your anger. But anger is emotion out of control. Passion is emotion under control. We must remain passionate, and everything that we're saying and doing must stay A+. But you also have to know your environment. Economics. Know your environment. And so my recommendations is to, first of all, I hope Sister Carol Taylor still has her book, The Little Black Book. She's in Brooklyn. Phenomenal educator. She was the first African-American stewardess. And she also she is a nurse. Phenomenal sister. And she wrote the book because she had a young man in middle school. So she and Judge Bruce Wright, the famous judge, phenomenal brother, got together and wrote out 30 things that you should know. Like right now, every young person should know their blood type. You ought to know the name of the captain that's in your local precinct where you live. Because, I used to, with the children, and also find a lawyer. Find a lawyer that you can call if you get into trouble. No one. But I used to do this with the children because, for instance, let's say that Captain Williams is in charge of the precinct where I live. And let's say I'm in my neighborhood and the police roll up on me. And they start asking me questions and things like that. And, you know, somewhere in that conversation, I'm going to say, you know, it's funny because I was in a coffee clash with Captain Williams the other day, and we were talking about blase, blase, blase. When that policeman know that I know his captain, he's going to deal with me differently. When he knows that I've had a coffee clash with the captain, there's a different dynamic that happens at that point. So they're going to be a little bit, now I'm not saying they're going to change because they might not. But what I'm saying is that when you create that familiarity and you understand something that goes beyond what they understand, there's a chance that they will not come at you as hard as they will normally.
Powerful. It's very good advice.
These are some of the things. And again, Carol Taylor is the one that dropped all this on us. And there are ways. Also, carry the Constitution. Know the Constitution. Because if you knew the Constitution, you would know that slavery was not ended.
Right.
Linguistically, it wasn't ended. Go to the 13th Amendment. Read it for what it is. When they put that contrasting conjunction, except, they say that slavery, blase, blase, will no longer exist, except the next phase, the next phrase is where they're telling you they sidestep slavery into, which is in prison.
Mass incarceration.
Stay out of prison.
Yes, stay out of prison.
And if you are a criminal, be a smart criminal that can't get caught. Because you know the difference between a smart criminal and a stupid criminal? Stupid criminals get caught. I'm just dropping it, man. I don't think I'm a criminal. I'd be smart. You ain't putting me away.
No, I hear that. Wow, that was deep and it's very good advice. Thank you for that. Very, very, very much appreciative with that. With that said, just want to shift the conversation quickly, and I know we're running out of time here. The Shabaka stone. No, that's yes, one of your babies there. What is the interrelationship of the Shabaka stone and the cosmology inscribed on it in human beings?
It actually was a theory on how the cosmic universe came into existence. But not only that, it was a story that when you applied it in your life, if you develop the same way that the cosmos developed, that you would have the same success that the cosmos had in developing itself.
Right.
The other thing, which was very radical, that showed the level of genius of our ancestors, was that they dared to imagine what existed before existence existed. What was before the beginning began, which they called the waters of Nun, N-U-N. And it was in these waters of Nun that we are when we are asleep. We all return back to the waters of Nun. And the same way we wake up is the same way the cosmos came into existence. And the same way we develop our day with all the things that we do during our day is the same way that the cosmos threw off of itself the superclusters and the clusters and the galaxies and the stars and the planets and the asteroids and the meteorites. The same exact thing. So the study of the Shabaka stone is not just the study of the Shabaka stone. It is the study of life.
Right.
And it can be applied. Black folk never did nothing without allowing it to be used. There's a proverb that says, if you cannot do something with what you learned, you wasted your time learning it.
Wow, that's powerful. Just for the audience, please, and I apologize for this. I should have started with this. What is Shabaka stone? Shabaka
stone is a stone that was found in Egypt by the French through Napoleon Bonaparte III. They took it from the farmers there, the Egyptian farmers. They took it from them because they were using it as a grinding stone. That's why it's so messed up. You know, it has pockmarks on it because it was used to break down wheat. When the French, who had just begun looking at Medunete or hieroglyphics, they knew this was more than just a stone, to a grinding stone. So they took it. Then when the British beat the French, then it was taken and brought into the British Museum in 1805. It is a stone, a basalt stone, huge. It's about 3 feet 4 inches by 4 foot 8 inches. So it's a rectangle. It has 4 different sections. The first section is a horizontal, 2 lines horizontal go across the top, and then 62 vertical lines. And it tells 3 philosophies of how the cosmos came into being, right down to the human family, organic life on the earth, which comes out of the Asarian drama. This is how deep our ancestors were. And they used the metaphor to tell the story. That's why there's a special section in Spirituality Before Religion that I'm using the Shabaka stone to demonstrate. I use the pyramid text to demonstrate, the coffin text, the Book of the Coming Forth Today by Night, the judgment scene, Shabaka stone, the Aten text. Spirituality Before Religions, Shabaka stone, is the attempt to interpret our ancestors' Africanness as it relates to science. And that's why the subtitle of Spirituality Before Religions is Spirituality is Unseen Science. Science is Seen Spirituality. You can't separate the two. Our ancestors had a sacred science. And in the Shabaka stone, it is actually showing you and demonstrating for you that if you apply these principles in your life, you will have success. And that's why the science that and in fact, the Shabaka stone got more science in it than the science that we teach today, which is very interesting. Our ancestors are ahead of today. So children say to me, well, Brother Kaba, why do I have to go back there? Why is it important to go into the past? Ain't nobody want to live in the past. Nobody want to stay in the past. Why are you going to the past? Why is it important to me? And I tell them, well, think of it like this. Think of a slingshot that you put a projectile in. And you pull that projectile with the sling back. The further back you go, the further in the front you're going to project the projectile. The purpose of you going back is not to stay there. The purpose of you going back is to be able to go further in front of you. Sankofa. So if you allow me to take your mind and take you back before the beginning began, if you allow me to take you when existence did not exist, and you allow me to let your mind go,
Look like we lost Brother Kaba here for a moment. Let's give him a minute to come back. While we're waiting for Brother Kaba to come in, if anyone has any questions, let's go ahead and get some of those questions asked. And while we're waiting, we'll give out some shout outs. We want to shout out everyone in the building. We got Michelle Jewell, Samuel Martin, Tahuti Films, Kevin Robinson, King Simon. So my boy Philippe Matthews in the house. Bakari Sanyu, Life of a Millionaire, Carissa Net, Butter Brown, Marie in the house. I want to thank you guys for joining us for another installment of HAPI Films. HAPI Talks. Also, you want to say if you're not subscribed or follow us, please do so we can continue to have programs like this. Subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And while we wait, we'll give Professor Kaba some more time to come back in. And also, family, please got any questions? Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to ask him before this discussion ends. Okay, I just want to make an announcement also. Next week, June 26th, we'll be having with us Brother Jabari Osaze. He will be with us on HAPI Talks. Looking forward to that interview. That should be a very powerful, not should be, it will be. Jabari is one of our great brothers. Looking forward to that. I also want to shout out Ronald Green, Daryl McIntosh, everyone in the HAPI team. That is also Deanna Bailey, good friend Dr. Mahat. Also want to give her a shout out as well. Peace, family. Peace for coming in the building. Appreciate you dearly for joining us. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see. Also got Ron Cannon. Let's see who else we got here. Jeremiah Africa Donald. Want to definitely give everybody shout outs. Thanks for the love and support. That's very important. Let's continue these type of discussions. HAPI Talks. Also got Madam Magma, Brian Smith, Najosh. Give him another minute or so, see if he was able to come back in. He said he had another interview coming up at 9 o'clock, so I'm not really sure if he's going to be able to join us again. If not, we'll definitely, close out. His time was kind of pressed, but we'll keep it going just in case he comes back. Like I said, for another minute or so, and if not, we'll just talk about the next interview. Like I said, June 26th, Jabari. We'll also have, in the beginning of July, Dr. Jeffries, Professor Smalls, many others. If you have any requests for people that you would like us to interview, please hit us in the chat, and we'll try to execute those interviews and get them on the platform to talk to them and have these great creative discussions once again. And keep moving this thing forward and liberate the minds of our people. So it looks like Brother Cobb is probably not going to be able to join us. Like I said, he had another interview coming up, and like he maybe has some technical difficulties there. We were at the end of the interview, by the way, anyway, so that was pretty much one of our last questions. So it happened at the right time, so that's Dua's piece. So with that said, just want to shout out everyone, thank everyone for joining us. Once again, much love and respect, everyone. Please follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I want to thank everyone for coming out, particularly the HAPI team. Felicia, C, his wife, Dion, Tammy, Rock, Elena, Daryl, all those are part of the HAPI team. Thank you. Love you guys. Much respect. Again, Jabari next week. And if anyone has any desires to see anyone being interviewed, let us know, and we'll do our best to make sure we get those interviews going. With that said, I want to give everyone a farewell. Good night. Hope you're safe where you're at. Peace. HAPI Talks. Take care. Peace.